Hello there, so you know about the feature request subforum, right? This was posted there a few months ago, catching the attention of a lot of Osu players for its, frankly, cute presentation. Some guy who literally just began playing the game found his way to the forum and asked for people to make more hip-hop maps. His request was found invalid because, genres of maps aren't a feature, but before being locked by moderation, the thread received thousands of stars worth of support and fame for its simple absurdity. Clearly worth it. While everyone deservedly treated this like a funny joke, Mr. Brand New Osu Player here does have a point. When sorting ranked maps by the hip-hop genre, we can see a severe drought of content. 89 maps total, only 19 of which were ranked in the last 5 years, and the latest one coming from September 2016. So head cracks concern. Why is this? Why doesn't Osu have many hip-hop or rap maps? The obvious answer would be most mappers don't care for hip-hop music, especially compared to older times. That definitely is a big factor, most likely the biggest one, but I don't think hip-hop is an entirely black or white issue. The more interesting reason why hip-hop and rap music is rare on Osu, I think is because those songs are harder to map than others in some of the most detrimental ways. In this video, we're gonna go over them. But before covering the specifics of that, a disclaimer. There's obviously outliers in any genre, but focusing on those wouldn't really be productive. I'll instead be generalizing a lot of the genre based on what's been mapped in Osu to explain what makes mapping it difficult. We on the same page? Cool. Okay. Let's start with the surface elements of mapping that could play a role here. A song's melody is what we usually focus on when listening, so it's usually the most appropriate part of a song to prioritize through a map. In hip-hop music, vocals are almost always the melody. Like, if you take the rapping out of a rap song, what are you even left with? Vocalists are the main instrument, and while that's true of a lot of genres, it can be relatively problematic for hip-hop. First, Mo recently made a case for why Japanese songs are so commonly found on Osu, one of his points being how vocals in that language are more well suited for mapping. Each syllable in Japanese has clear impact because of how the language is spoken, which allows for a satisfying rhythm, while English and other languages blend syllables between different notes, which along with their usage of more complex sounds, muddies their impacts. This can lead to weak vocal sounds in any kind of English music, but especially for a lot of popular hip-hop songs whose vocalists emphasize a dialect that doesn't have the clearest enunciation. Non-syllabic singing, paired with imprecise pronunciation, makes for vocals that can easily feel uncomfortable to follow in a beat map. But, well, that only matters in the cases where it's even possible to follow vocals. A lot of rap is just unrealistic to coordinate rhythms around vocals because vocalists don't even try to sing along with a metronome. To understand what I mean, let's examine the one rapper everyone knows as an example. Okay, this part of the song is manageable. The points of emphasis for each vocal syllable here are approximated to line up with the background beat, making for a predictable rhythm that any player can understand. If I slow this down though, it becomes clear that rhythm isn't exactly correct. While the poor synchronization between vocals and percussion here can feel a bit off-putting in gameplay, it's not bad enough to be confusing. If rhythms were to accurately follow vocals, it would be a lot worse. Yeah, the rhythm here, not playable at all, so that approximation stuff was good. In some sections, however, approximation is literally impossible. Definitely not a good situation. Because vocals are so scattered here, the mapper chose to just ignore them completely and map some generic rhythm prioritizing percussion. It's not ideal, but it's really the only option. Following vocals here would be, honestly, better not to even try. And again, this applies to all music to some degree, just more so to hip-hop because of how vocals in this genre are performed. The point of rapping isn't so much a strictly orchestrated musical experience where each note lands on a precise beat, but rather something akin to natural speaking. It's more casual, more informal. That makes for a less straightforward melody to follow with rhythm choice, and therefore an increase in mapping difficulty. If that weren't bad enough though, what makes this worse is how the beats of hip-hop songs often don't support ease of mapping in the same ways as other genres. I know I just went on about how important and clear vocals are to mapping, but percussion and other background instruments are what truly carry maps. This general idea is hard for new mappers to understand at first. In this map of mine, for example, I was once asked why this part of the music is mapped with half-beat jumps, while this one is mapped with only 3 circles. The vocals are the same and they're the melodies, so I should be following them with jumps in the second one, right? Maybe that makes sense, but every mapper I know would handle it like I did here. I think this goes back to the satisfying impact of sounds to click concept I briefly mentioned earlier. Percussion feels best to play because their sharp impacts reflect how we click circles. When percussion stops and vocals are alone in a song, it feels like individual beats aren't powerful enough to deserve clicking. This is why tons of maps that follow vocals will suddenly stop doing so in coordination with background instrumentals stopping, like this, or this, or this. When vocals in a song stop, however, mappers don't just halt rhythm altogether. They instead choose to follow the secondary beat until vocals pick up again, like this. This stuff is kind of hard to grasp at first, but playing and observing maps will show this to be the case 99% of the time. Eventually it'll become natural for you. So back on topic, what does this have to do with hip-hop? I think that the background beat of a lot of hip-hop songs is often too simple and too calm for engaging mapping. By simple, you probably imagine I'm referring to this sort of thing. Try to ignore the vocals and pay attention to the beat here. Rhythmically, this is not complex at all. Sounds repeat at a constant interval. I've complained about this being boring to map countless times, but this is only one aspect of simplicity. In addition to that, if I skip around anywhere in this 4-minute song, all I can hear is the same beat. With so much focus put on vocals, the beat lacks any noteworthy changes, making for even more repetitive mapping. And that's not even mentioning the bigger problem with these beats, their lack of intensity to support modern styles of mapping. What characterizes all the pop rock songs on Osu? Exciting instrumentation that gets your blood pumping. What characterizes hip-hop songs? Chill, relaxing instrumentation under which vocalists perform. While big jumps and high slider velocity may fit well with the first, that's not always so true about the second. The atmosphere of a song is part of what determines how intense a map can be, not just individual sounds. Like in this map, I'd say the jumps here would be better if spaced lower, even though there are clear sounds supporting each circle. Same goes for this map, whose background beat is more complex than usual. The map may be well designed and each object correlates to sounds in the song, but I personally feel that the beat doesn't have enough excitement to support the high slider velocity and spacing used. Something about the composition is just not intense enough. This matters even more when taking into account the slowness of most beats. The song here is 100 BPM for example, while its rhythm and object composition are closer to a 200 BPM map. When handling maps like this, bigger jumps can feel even more unusual since the general atmosphere of the song feels slower than the map expresses. So yeah, vocals are hard to map in hip-hop music, therefore mappers resort to the background instrumentals. But those background instrumentals are unfortunately repetitive and unsupportive of intense design. All that said, if you're mapping hip-hop, you're gonna have a bad time. That does cover why hip-hop songs are hard to map, but I think this can be taken a step further actually. Why do I and a lot of other mappers find hip-hop songs to feel weird sometimes? For those reasons I just went over, sure, but there's one more important factor: comparison to other genres. We play maps of the same music genres in Osu almost non-stop. Enthusiastic J-pop, hyper-rhythm game electronic stuff, hardcore rock, and everything else along those lines. Mappers all tend to map in similar ways too, creating the same patterns and forming the same rhythms out of familiarity. Because we're so used to seeing this type of design associated with certain genres of music, seeing it paired with the polar opposite kinds of songs can make for an uncanny experience. That explains why some hip-hop maps feel more appropriate to me when they use unorthodox concepts. Lil Uzi Vert's song by Handsome is a perfect example of this. In the first slider-only section here, he uses 1/4 sliders of 2 different speeds to signal when he's following the background beat versus vocals. As it goes on, it expands on the concept by keeping all sliders the same visual length, this really short thing, but introducing different rhythms on dark blue sliders. Next comes the circles only section, further enforcing the combo color changes and patterning to rhythm changes gimmick, and near the end it expands into a combination of all those ideas. Because the concepts in this map differ from those I experience in every anime opening and Camellia web map out there, it somehow is more in line with my expectations for this kind of music. Or in other words, because hip-hop maps are rare on Osu, rare mapping ideas feel most appropriate. I think this may be one of the most important reasons why we don't see many hip-hop songs in Osu. People learn to map based on what they experience, the popular genres. They can't easily transfer that knowledge to a genre like hip-hop though, since it just doesn't fit as well. It's like learning how to draw cute anime girls, then being told to draw an issue of the next Batman comic. You know how to draw, just not in the style that's necessary, so it only ends up feeling wrong. Maybe this didn't matter in the past when mapping expectations for genres weren't established, but with mapping growing more and more defined today, I think it does make a difference, for all genres, but most importantly hip-hop. Mapping hip-hop is hard for both technical reasons, and for reasons related to expectations, which might be why there's so few maps of this music on Osu. Or I'm overthinking it and it's just that mappers don't like rap music. There's probably lots of rap songs that are reasonable to map in familiar ways, yet nobody's interested. Sorry headcrack, you gotta be the change you wish to see in the world if you want more hip-hop. Good luck though. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next week.